Hi guys, what you've got here is a webinar that we've recently recorded that we want to share with you. It comes on the back of a presenter slot that I had at the CIPD annual conference just a month or so ago. Went fantastically, got over 100 people there, absolutely crammed in. And what we thought we'd do was replicate that as a webinar. So what you can see here, what now follows, is a half an hour. The topic is Learning Development Solutions for Generation Y and Z. Enjoy. Good morning everyone. It's a real pleasure to invite you to have you along to this webinar, Designing L&D Solutions for Generation Y and Z, or Y and Z if you're from the States. We've got a half an hour slot together, so we haven't got long, and we've got quite a lot to think through, but we'll try and keep this a really sort of energetic session. My promise to you is to try and create in this next half an hour a kind of mind massage, you know, like when you go to those posh hairdressing salons and they get their fingers on the top of your head and give you a good kind of brain massage. Well, this is what we're going to be doing in the next half hour. I want to give you food for thought, things to make your brain work, tick over, think about how actually we go about designing learning and development solutions for what I'm going to call millennials generally. And maybe I'll talk a little about a different definition here as we get started too. By the way, I married a hairdresser, so I don't know what that says about the sort of head massage. You've got to be a bit careful with that kind of thing, I think. So we're going to be thinking about those who were born from 1990 really. So millennials, I would define that as those from 1990 up to 2010. Generation Y generally before the millennium, Generation Z post-millennium. There's a bit of difference on the way people define that, but that's what I'm going to be referring to as we work through the session today. So that millennial group that are now very significantly coming into the work environment or dominating actually the work environment, as we'll talk about over the next few years as the demographic really shifts. So just very briefly here, I'm going to give you a very quick just introduction to us as iManage, and then we'll get straight into it. So iManage, if you don't know us, is a learning development company. We're a training company, and at our heart has always been this idea that we want to change people for good. That's why we're in business. There's a bit of a play on words there, obviously. There's the play on words in terms of changing people for the better, but also changing people long term, and that's our goal. That's what we're all about. And that has resulted in us creating products, solutions in the L&D space that we believe are environments that challenge people to think and act. That's really how we have codified our solution design. We've got a particular structure, and it's all about a helpful challenge, not only the thought process, but putting stuff into action as well. So it's a behavioral change. Working in the completely in the soft skills space of organizational development, organizational behavior, management, supervisory, senior management, organizational behavior type stuff. And delivering right across the 70-20-10. We have the traditional face-to-face solutions. We have the 20% supported learning, which we would include e-learning and coaching within that, and a whole bunch of different interventions. And then we also have a 70% social learning tool with thisworkwell.com, which is a bit of a unique thing to string all that 70-20-10 together. So that's kind of advert over really, and what I want to do is get right into the content of this session, and let's explore and look at this idea of L&D for Gen Y and Z. Now, I had a lovely Facebook moment 2 or 3 weeks ago. You know how it is, you're paging through your Facebook feed, and a picture comes up that I'm tagged in, and this is the picture you can see here. This is the first band that I was ever in, or sort of a pop rock band that I was ever in. It was called Subway 19, and one of the guys in this picture found this photograph somewhere, I didn't even remember its existence, and posted up. And it was a lovely kind of journey back in time. It's about 1979, I think, the year of this photograph. And I think I can be quite specific about that because because of circumstances around about that. And, this was a really cool thing. Now, what I want to do through this session is actually get you chatting with me and using the chat box. So let's just rehearse with that for a moment. You've got there the chat box that you can type in. If we say here that we go from left to right, and left is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. across here, just type in the chat box for me so I know you're there. Which of those 5 people you think I am? So left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyone got a good guess as to which one is me there? Type it in the chat box as we work through, and we'll see whether you get that right. Can't see any. Oh, yeah, number 2. No, Charlie, not number 2. No. That's some more tries. No, 2 as well. No. What challenge? 5. No, not number 5. One on the extreme right. No, Harry. It's 4. It's number 4. That's me. Number 4 there. And the lovely thing about this photograph, the thing I truly loved about this photograph, is that one of my sons, Isaac, I've always thought I didn't look like him, but my whole family, everyone who knew me on my Facebook feed was going, that's Isaac, that's Isaac. So whilst I've never doubted that, he was my son, it's nicely reassuring to have him kind of see, actually, there is a resemblance. But the interesting thing here is I'm wearing Santa boots, you might notice. And they're motorcycle boots actually. That's because, quite simply, if I go to the next picture, I've gone the wrong way. If I go to the next picture here, there is my Honda SS50. How cool was I? Now, this was why I placed it as 1979, because I had those boots on. This was my bike. And there I was, the last of the baby boomers. Now, this is the point here. Thank you, Mary. I look so innocent, she says. Yeah, maybe. Here I am, young teenager, not a care in the world, no internet. The biggest technological change in my era was probably the skateboard for a start. First generations where skateboards hit. And then at the very end of that period, my teenage years, the CB radio, which suddenly meant you could talk to somebody in another street, which was quite phenomenal. You could just have a conversation with somebody in another street. And that was it. That was kind of the extent of the technology hit back there in 1979. And the interesting thing here, as we think about that baby boom generation, again, there's differences in definition around baby boomers, but kind of post-war up until kind of the end of the 70s, just about scrape in as one of the last of the baby boomers, I think. We are about to exodus the workplace en masse. In the next decade, we're going to see the workplace transformed because this generation of baby boomers are about to leave. They're heading for retirement. At best, there's going to be a 15-year window, and at the bottom end of that, in the next 5 years, it really starts to tip the balance. Which, of course, means that this generation that I'm in is going to go with all its knowledge and experience, and we've got a new generation coming in. So let me just go forward a whole bunch of years to 2015, and here's another picture. So I'm still into bikes. You can see that. Here am I on the right-hand side. These are 2 of my sons, well, my 2 sons. I've got a daughter as well. I've got 3 of these millennials in my life experience. So these 2, this was last year, great fun. We had a tour, me and the boys on bikes around the UK for a week. We got absolutely drenched. Again, a lovely picture because here's my 2 boys looking so super cool. And there's Dad with his, high vis on, looking like a right nerd here. But there you go. It happens as you get old. For those that are, potentially bikers here, and I know Harry's got an interest in motorcycles, I'm just going to put in a link here to the blog that we posted around that trip. But the point is not the trip. The point is actually that these Generation Ys are set to take over the world. The PwC are saying that by 2020, this generation, these millennials, are going to take up 50% of the workforce. So we are facing, as many of us know, a real major shift in the demographic within the workplace. And these guys and girls, they have grown up in such a different world to us baby boomers. Their experience and the whole onslaught of technology has been so massively different to those years that I experienced. And so we've been researching that a bit at iManage. We're looking at it, we've been thinking about that. And what we're going to do in the next kind of remaining 20 minutes or so, what I want to do is share with you some of that insight, some of the insight from the research we've done and where that's led us in terms of designing L&D solutions. And then what I want to do is to share sort of 3 key ideas and kind of break any myths that might exist. There's certainly one myth that exists, I think, around baby boomers, and give you 5 things that we ought to be doing when we're designing L&D solutions for this generation. So we're using research that I've picked up on, just stuff I've looked at on the web, and a bit of experience from having 3 millennials live with me for the last 25 years or slightly more. So here we go. Let's jump straight in and get to some content and some thinking here. Here's thought 1. This millennial generation are a generation that are very much into a personalized work experience. It shows itself in many different ways, actually. One of those ways is that there's an expectation from this generation that their work experience is going to give them multiple insights, multiple types of experience from one job role. And there's a lot of desire around customization with that. There's a sense in which they want to do things their own way. They want to use their own equipment even, kind of their preferred style of technology to access the work environment. There's a sense in which they want to be dynamic and not be cut down and bound, because there's a real recognition in this generation that they are hugely unlikely to have one career, one path that just follows on. So there's an awareness that they need to build multiple skill sets around many different areas to help them cope with life and the changes in life that's going to come their way and the changes in career. There are jobs now that these folks are doing that didn't even exist when I was their age. And that's going to be the case in the coming years. So there's a real sort of hunger for this sort of personalized, varied experience. And PwC report that I picked up on, interestingly, asked the question about, what's the most important thing? What are your priorities within your job? And 65%, the highest score in that survey question, went to putting opportunities for personal development as their top priority. Now that's really interesting. 65% of millennials saying job development, learning experience, personal development is the top requirement for them. So, there's a real shift here from that sense of actually even money, kind of wanting to chase the pound so much. But work-life balance and development opportunities are really high. So development came first, work-life balance came second. And I think we see that in my own experience. We've seen that with millennials where, kind of even something like a 0 hours contract is not necessarily a bad thing in their mind, because it allows them to do other things. It allows them to have other strings to their bow. It allows them to do kind of exciting things that maybe, they had an art degree or music degree or something, and they want to create some time in the week to do that as well as do their job. So, really interesting shift there. And then you've kind of got this rapidly growing community of self-directed learners as well. We have, for the first time, got professionals, people like web designers, who have predominantly self-taught themselves. They've bought into technical web development sites like udemy.com and places like that, where they can go in and learn web design skills, etc., etc. And there's a whole community there. They are helping themselves, are choosing their own learning mechanism and have their own preference about how they want to learn and what they want to learn. So, self-directed learners, there's a real sense in which they are hungry for that. And I've got a link here. Again, you can look at this afterwards. If I put this link in here, I'll just copy it get my keyboard out of the way, copy and paste in the chat box here, folks, for you. What you can see here, I mean, if you want to click on that and look at it later, is some other research that we've been doing, some thinking about this whole idea of self-directed and video-led self-directed learning that seems to be really prominent right now. Okay, so let's move on to the second thing that I want to suggest and talk about. And that's that this generation have been so used to living in an environment of feedback. They are, in a sense, like full-time brand managers. You know, this generation, if you think about it, have been brought up, over half some of their lives has been on Facebook. And they have been so used to constant self-marketing, the whole social media thing, looking for and understanding how they gain affirmation, you know, likes from the population that they're working with and that they're kind of presenting themselves with. And so you've got this generation that right from the word go have been receiving feedback upon feedback about their lives in so many different walks of life. You know, this is the generation where SATs were introduced, you know, the school testing at primary school. So right from primary school, they've been used to getting this trigger, this feedback upon how they're doing. And there's a bit of a sense in which they, you know, can't get enough of that. We're in a generation where apps abound to give you personal feedback, and we're now kind of moving into that whole medical side that is emerging, and massive advances in providing feedback about your life, how you're doing, you know, the number of steps that you're taking is, you know, on pretty well every smartphone. We're on the cusp of technology revolution in the medical world. I'm diabetic. This little thing here, I just switch it on. I've got a patch on my arm. I put it on the patch on my arm, and it will tell you my blood sugars are at 10. Bit high, but, you know, okay, that will come down during the course of the day, one hopes. But the reality is we're now getting so much information available to us, and this is going to grow and grow and grow. And even personal information like the level of sugar in my blood is now just on tap. So this generation likes that feedback. They're very comfortable with it. This isn't about patronizing or hand-holding, but giving people real insight. So giving them information that they're not aware of, feeding data to them that is useful data that they can assimilate, understand, and then fine-tune and make changes about. You know, we have, I guess, a group of people on our hands that are so technology orientated that they're now watching more on their laptops and PCs than they are on TV. An interesting stat around this generation that the majority of them don't have a BBC television license. They're accessing the stuff they want to watch via the web and via the use of technology. PwC, in the same study that I'm referring to, you can look this up actually, it's a really nice study on millennials. I should have got the link here, maybe I'll try and get the link out after this session so you can have a look at that. But 41% said that they preferred to communicate electronically rather than face-to-face. Now, okay, that's 40% is not everyone, but that's a massive chunk of people that will have as their first option a technology solution to communicate rather than a face-to-face solution. You know, some of the guys we work in our web team, in our development team, they're kind of associates to us. They've got mobile lives, they've got mobile job styles, and you know, if I try and phone them, I probably never get them. But if I use Slack or something within our network, I'll probably get a response within a minute, because they are so tapped into this way of communicating with us. So let's look at the third thing that I want to suggest, and then I've got these 5 ideas, it's kind of countdown, these 5 ideas that we can inject into L&D solution design. So the third thing I want to suggest is that this myth that these individuals, these millennials, have a short attention span, I think needs busting. You know, we need to reframe that in some way. And the way I'm reframing it, and from the research that I've looked at, is that actually it's much more that it's not an attention problem. It's that they have been so used to looking at content, making a quick decision as to whether that's something that's valuable for them, and making a choice about that. And so it's like a 10-second filter. If you put something, a piece of learning content, then you really you really need it to get past that filter if it's going to attract them. And just notice, Harry, you said that they need a license to watch BBC on the web. That is very true. That is very true. So yeah, maybe there's some people breaking some rules there, but I'm not kind of suggesting that. But who knows? So anyway, going back to this, it's a sense in which there's so much data and information available that the options are limitless. But the problem is that their time is short. So they work very quickly, this generation, at thinking, you know, is this good? Is this trusted? And if it's not, forget it. I'm not on board. And I think, as I put it here, you know, this idea around gamification, from the conversations we've had, there's a real cynicism about gamification in L&D. And I'm not surprised at that, actually, because if you think about millennials gaming, man, they have been used to gaming with multi-million pound, multi-million dollar budgets. So the gaming that they're used to is such high quality, so interactive, so absorbing, has so much budget thrown at it. If you spend, I don't know, 10 grand on a bit of gamification or something in a piece of e-learning, the chances are they'll kind of go, it's just patronising. It's not hitting the spot. This is just, you know, asking me to drag and drop something in a box is not gamification. It is actually, you know, kind of treating me like a child. So I think if we see gamification as a route forward in L&D, as, you know, in terms of the technology-led and e-learning arenas, then I think we've got to have a huge budget. We've got to be able to create something that is completely absorbing and engaging, and that is massively difficult with the kind of budgets that we're likely to have in organisations. What we do see, though, as a sort of the other side of that, is that we have these swathes of youngsters who are accessing YouTube and video-led micro-learning. We have a generation that's going to YouTube to learn almost anything about almost anything. You know, if they've got a flat tyre on their car, they'll go to YouTube to find out how to change it. They've got an ingrown toenail, they'll probably go to YouTube to work out how they do the operation on themselves. You know, it's kind of prolific, really. It's now the second biggest search engine over and above Google. And it is the place where this generation, and to be honest, me too, you know, our generation, we're going to YouTube to learn almost anything. I wonder, you know, if you've used YouTube in the last few weeks or month or so to learn something about something, just kind of put that in the chat box. Let me hear your feedback and thoughts about that. I've just bought a new bass guitar, actually, and where did I go to make that choice to learn about it? I spent time on YouTube. I searched, looked at different reviews, made my choice. I learned which one I wanted to purchase, and it's now, you know, kind of a you know, really predominant tool. That's just made me laugh, Harry. He's just put how to catch a mole with a mole trap. Yeah, there we go. You know, we can go to YouTube, how to fix my car seat. Yeah, use it to decide what top box to buy for my motorbike. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Mary's got a motorbike. Really, yeah, we like the sound of that, Mary. So there you go. You know, it is this idea of video-led learning that has really created a predominant vehicle for this generation. Now, what's the time? Time's rushing on. I need to get through these 5 things. So, the other thing I just point on before I move off this slide is actually there's this sense in which personality-led learning is ruling the day as well. You've got these vloggers, these people that perhaps you and I are pretty unfamiliar with, but people from around the world who are relatively unknown, yet they have massive following. You know, 2 million people on their YouTube feed that will watch a weekly vlog about something. And you know, this style of personality-led video-led learning, but personality bias where they get to know somebody and they work with somebody and they kind of build a relationship, albeit quite one way, that relationship is a really growing phenomenon. You know, massive following that some of these bloggers have, and a lot of it is fun. It's social style. It's chit-chatty. It's quite humorous on occasions, and you know, in terms of professionalism, it's much more on that. Well, it's much more on that social side than this kind of hard professional side. So yeah, really interesting dynamic. So let's come here and start looking at my countdown. Well, 5 things then, based on this research, that I think are really valuable if we are going to be creating L&D solutions that make people in this demographic switch on and shop up and yeah, kind of learn. So here's the first thing, number 5. I truly believe you've got to work out how you build in effective feedback mechanisms. You know, it's got to be meaningful. It's got to be meaningful discussion, perhaps guidance and sharing. It's got to be peer critique, you know, other people's views on stuff. And, you know, its opinions and evaluation too are all really useful areas for us to focus on, and whatever our intervention, you know, whether it's traditional face-to-face, 10% style, whether it's supported learning, e-learning, whether it's social learning, we need to work out how we create active live feedback on a constant basis, insightful feedback, you know, kind of put in an angle, giving a perspective that they haven't yet caught or seen. And providing in all of that, I would suggest a supportive and reassuring environment in this space. You know, it's really quite interesting. About 3 weeks ago, the BBC had a news story which said that there's been a 30% increase in this generation, the millennials, going to the doctor with concerns around anxiety and stress. Now, you know, you kind of wonder what's the relation here. Even this morning, BBC News, I caught it again, there was a news article this morning that was talking about, you know, real anxiety problems associated with heavy users of social media. And so I think, you know, there's a kind of another side to this kind of personal brand management that, I don't know, whether it's creating a generation that we need to be very supportive of and reassuring in our feedback and find ways of doing that in a way that, you know, don't damage and hinder, but give useful, great insight to people. So that's number 5. Number 4, I'm going to suggest is this. We need to build autonomous learners around our organisation. You know, with the best will in the world, we can pull together a really quality portfolio for our staff, for our population, but we will never be able to serve all the learning needs of our employees. And especially if you take this idea of sort of personalization into view, we will never be able to put together the ideal portfolio of learning solutions that will suit absolutely everyone, and particularly in this generation. So what we need to do is provide the tools and enable people to take the responsibility for their own learning much more. So yeah, we will always have our portfolio of offering that we're providing, but I think we've got to think wider about, you know, what are the vehicles, what's available out there, and how actually do we allow our organisation and our staff to access those things in a kind of an effective way. You know, we still we work with organisations that ban social media on their networks, and, you know, maybe for good reasons of things, but I can't see how that can continue into the future when we're going to need to provide a wider range of access to these people so they can help themselves, they can personalise their learning much more. You know, we work with some youthful companies as well, kind of media companies where, you know, it makes me feel quite old when I'm working with them. Real, you know, massive already millennial population within them. And in those organisations, I can tell you, they allow any social media. You know, they encourage it and work with that whole area to allow them to have access in a wider portfolio. So that whole autonomous leader thing, number 3, let's go to my number 3 point. I think eye on the clock. Got a couple of minutes left. Going to take maybe just a few minutes over half hour. Apologies for that, but stick with me if you can. We've got to build learning communities. We've got to build an environment and create vehicles for sharing. I think, pre-structured threads, avoiding redundancy and chaos, but facilitated in-depth discussion and interactive response. This generation is so used to that, so used to be able to sort and sift and find what their interest topic and enter the dialogue and have discussion around that. So I think building a learning community becomes a really important aspect of how we start to create solutions for Generation Y and Z. Then number 2, I'm going to suggest that we need to build micro-learning as conversation enablers. Now, I put the YouTube logo on this page because I think, the video-led is definitely an interesting phenomena here. And there's other ways to do this for sure, but we need to create discussion enablers, stimulating fun content, personality-led content potentially, and allow people the ability to comment against those learning assets, just like they would in a YouTube or Facebook feed, to have that discussion that follows out of something and to debate it and to create the learning around something that's quite small and quite short, but is the trigger for that discussion. You go onto LinkedIn, that happens all the time now. Somebody will put a post up and then the community who's seen that will start to comment and discuss that. And sometimes within great groups like CIPD group, etc., you'll find massive long discussions where people are debating and discussing the nuances of that topic. And I think that's what we've got to do. We've got to build those stimulus that trigger the discussion and then enable the discussion and facilitate that as it works through. So that's 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, number 1, you're going to have to excuse me for this, but we've been working hard at putting all of this together. So we have built a product called iManageAcademy.com, which is a real attempt at trying to pull this together and create a product that is really valuable to this generation. So I'm going to put that link in the chat feed as well, so you can have a look at this afterwards. But the bottom line here is that what we've got is an environment that is CMI endorsed, it's CMI certified as well, but is really built around this creating an environment, an academy where people can share and learn and discuss together, where they can go in and they can go into one of the lecture rooms and they can choose what they want to learn at any particular point. That has kind of this personality style to it, that has a community forum so they can discuss and can post against any piece of video content and learn from it. So I would love you to have a look at this. If you do nothing else, have a look and think about how some of these ideas that we've been talking about in reaching millennials with L&D solutions have been worked out in practice here. There is a complete free toolkit. If you go to that homepage, there's a toolkit you can sign up for that gives you a flavor of its unique content. It's not content that's in the Academy, but you can see the style of content that is really starting to resonate in this community, within this demographic. So that's it. That's our 5 things that we think are really critical to do, and some ideas and myths about this community. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for coming on board. It's been a real pleasure to have you on board with us. We'd love you to grab hold of that free toolkit within the Academy, have a look at that content. We'd love you to continue the discussion with us. Help us think through, and we'll work with you and chat with you. There's no taxi meter running to explore how we really nuance and create learning solutions that are ready for this demographic shift that we're all facing within the organizations that we work in and work with. So thank you. It's been a real pleasure. We'll do some more of this, so watch out for the next webinar from iManage as we get going. It's lovely to spend this time with you. All the best. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. If I don't speak to you before in any way, shape or form, have a great Christmas too.